What was it like to play NFL in a leather helmet? Can you imagine playing professional football with no face mask, no mouth guard, and just a thin piece of leather on your head? Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly how legends played the game from the 1920s to the 1950s, the brutal leather helmet era of the NFL. No billion-dollar contracts, no instant replays, just raw grit and bone-crushing hits. In this video, we're diving deep into what it was really like to survive and thrive in football's most dangerous age, the leather helmet era of the NFL, 1920s to 1950s. Let's go back to 1920 and a sweltering August day in Canton, Ohio. To provide some order to the turmoil, a few small-town football teams from Akron, Canton, Decatur, and Dayton banded together. The AFPA, which would eventually become the NFL, was founded at the conference. And football in those days, believe me, it was crazy. There were no official schedules. College athletes played under false names and secrecy, and players switched teams in an attempt to get paid. Complete chaos. Nearly no one turned up, even after the league started. The first official game, it attracted roughly 800 supporters. The audience at a high school playoff game today is far larger than that. Among the first teams to join on were the Decatur Staleys, now known as the Chicago Bears, and the Canton Bulldogs, which included the legendary Jim Thorpe. These men weren't professional athletes at the time. On the weekends, they dressed up and did their normal jobs during the week. And the salary? Just budget $125 for a day game and perhaps $75 for a night game. Even though college football remained the dominant sport, those grueling early seasons were laying the groundwork for something monumental.
Football history on rain-soaked Franklin Field, Philadelphia. Red Grange defeats Pennsylvania. The ball carrier in these rare scenes is the galloping ghost himself. In this, his first appearance in the East, Red piles up 363 out of a total of 450 yards for Illinois and scores 3 touchdowns. After this victory, the fabulous Grange was carried 4 miles on the shoulders of his admirers, offered a $120,000 a year job, and urged to run for Congress. Yes, the old-fashioned newsreel camera adds to his speed in these scenes, but can't detract from his fame as the greatest man who ever wore moleskins.
Imagine this now. Footballs so fat they resembled overstuffed pillows. No stadium lighting and hardly any passing. The NFL functioned in this manner. Due to the rarity of night games, one team had to paint the ball white in 1929 so the players could really see it. Is the ball being passed? Very little. The NFL was all about pounding the rock for the majority of the 1930s. Coaches positioned players in the Notre Dame box and just ran the ball into defender walls. Only in the late 1930s and early 1940s did men like Sammy Baugh and Don Hutson begin to alter the rules. They demonstrated that the forward pass was a legitimate weapon and not just a desperate tactic. However, it remained mostly raw, smash-mouth football in the leather helmet era, tough, muddy, and brutally straightforward. leather helmet. Old-timey protection. Now imagine that you're sprinting at full speed into a 250-pound lineman, and what essentially resembles an old leather cap is the only thing keeping your head safe. Yeah, that was the beginning of it all. Helmets were actually thick leather headgear in the early NFL days. Players wore what you could think of as antique aviator caps. They made a little update to a leather headguard by the 1920s, but let's not fool ourselves. These devices provided very little protection. No face masks, no hard shells, just stitched leather in a chin strap, holding on for dear life. The worst part? Helmets weren't even mandated until 1943. With little more than bravery and a nice haircut, those players plunged headfirst into pandemonium for 20 years. Some men didn't bother at all. Dick Plassman, in end with the Chicago Bears, steadfastly refused to wear a helmet. Remain tuned, this crazy tale will be revealed later. The first plastic helmet with an interior suspension system designed to absorb impacts was introduced by Riddell in 1939. Doesn't that seem like a game changer? Not so fast. The initial iterations were, to use a word, explosive. Some of them literally broke on impact. They were even temporarily outlawed by the NFL. However, plastic helmets returned after World War II as improved materials were available. They were more robust, more secure, and ready for war. By 1948, Fred Gerke of the Rams had painted horns on his helmet lid, creating the NFL's first painted helmet logo. Helmets became more than just equipment, they became a symbol of identity. Don't be fooled by the paint though, padding was still crude. Shoulder pads? Up to the 1950s, they were nothing more than rigid leather straps. Back then, every snap was a risk. Nevertheless, there was an indisputable coolness to it all. You can almost smell the gritty swagger of those cracked leather hats. How the game was played. Rules and roughness.
You play the Bears, and I've heard it myself from different people, that they better get ready.
NFL football from the 1920s to the 1940s, it was almost a completely different sport. Back then, it was 11 on 11 Iron Man football. No swapping in and out like today. You played offense, defense, and special teams all game long. Need a break? Tough luck. Substitutions were rare and sometimes penalized. The NFL didn't allow full substitutions until 1950, when the two-platoon system began. One guy could be blocking, tackling, punting, and running all in the same game. Stamina mattered just as much as talent. Offense, mostly run-heavy, ground and pound stuff. The forward pass was legal in college since 1906, but in the NFL, it was used only in desperation. According to the Hall of Fame, even when Don Hutson and Sammy Baugh came along, passing was still a trick play. Forget deep bombs, it was all smash-mouth runs through walls of linemen. Baugh started changing that in the late 30s, but the league took time to catch up. Scoring rules were familiar, 6 for a touchdown, 3 for a field goal, 1 for an extra point. But field goals were critical. With so little passing, teams relied on drop kicks and place kicks. Special teams? No protection at all. The kicker just lined up and prayed he wouldn't get flattened. And defense? Absolutely brutal. No roughing the passer. No rules for defenseless players. If you could hit a guy, even above the shoulders, it was fair game. Just don't grab his hair. That was too much. Players took hits that shattered jaws, knocked out teeth, and broke noses, and kept playing. The NFL didn't even recommend face masks until 1955. Oh, and the fields? Even more dangerous. Many teams played in old baseball stadiums. Wrigley Field in Chicago had a brick wall in the end zone, and a sunken dugout on the other side. Guys literally crashed into walls or leapt over hazards to make a play. They weren't just playing football, they were risking their lives. But despite the madness, the game evolved. In 1940, George Halas and the Chicago Bears unleashed the T formation, a key turning point for modern offense. They crushed the Redskins 73-0 in the title game, a national headline. And for the first time, pro football got real attention. Mutual Radio paid $2,500 to broadcast the game nationwide, a big deal back then. It was raw, it was ruthless, but little by little, One broken nose at a time, the NFL was winning America's heart. Legends of the leather era. Let's talk about the men who shaped football. The ones who didn't just play in the leather helmet era, they defined it. Red Grange, the Galloping Ghost. The NFL's first true superstar. Grange racked up nearly 2,000 yards in college, including 402 in one game. When George Halas signed him to the Bears in 1925, everything changed. He led an 8-game, 12-day national tour that packed stadiums. Fast, flashy, even friends with Hollywood stars. Grange made the NFL legit. Sports Illustrated says without him, today's $10 billion NFL might not exist. Bronco Nagurski, the human bulldozer. At 6'2", 235 pounds, Nagurski was a tank in cleats. He played both fullback and defensive tackle, and wrecked anyone in his path. With 3 NFL titles, multiple All-Pro honors, and even a coaching stint, he was feared, respected, and unforgettable. Don Hudson, the first wide receiver. Before root trees and replays, there was Hudson. He caught a touchdown on his very first play with the Packers in 1935 and ended with 99 career touchdowns, a record that stood 40 years. Teams had to double and triple team him. Alongside Sammy Baugh, he helped turn the NFL into a passing league. Sammy Baugh, the game changer. Joined the Redskins in 1937 and changed the quarterback role forever. He could pass, punt, and play defense, a true triple threat. Baugh led the league in passing again and again, proving that an arm, not just legs, could win games. The founding forces. Don't forget the Builders, the Packers under Curly Lambeau, the Detroit Lions of the 30s and 50s, the legendary George Halas, who practically ran the Bears solo, and the Rooney family, who kept the Steelers alive when the league was on life support. These legends played with no face masks, minimal padding, and maximum heart. Grange, Nagurski, Hudson, and Baugh, they weren't just players, they were the ones who wrote the NFL's first chapter. Hard knocks on the gridiron. Heartbreakers. To be honest, this isn't hyperbole. In the days of leather helmets, medical assistance was hardly available. No medical tents, no headset-wearing team doctors. Most teams had an ice bag and a guy dressed like a street vendor who might have also been the equipment manager. Injured? You were expected to shake it off and keep playing. Break a bone? Tape it up. Sprain something? Whiskey or ice? Maybe both. What about concussions? Please, they didn't even call them that. You were playing until your legs gave out or your vision went blurry. And now, this is where things get nasty. Dick Plasman, receiver for the Chicago Bears, was sprinting straight for the end zone at Old Wrigley Field in 1938. But Wrigley had a brick wall back there, and Plasman, who refused to wear a helmet, ran right into it. He was knocked out cold, blood everywhere. One teammate said he peeled his whole scalp off his head. Oh, and he also broke his wrist in the same play. Somehow, he survived, took a few weeks off, met a nurse at the hospital, they eventually married, and went back to playing. His only protection? His luscious blonde locks. Sounds wild. It was, but it wasn't rare. Guys played through broken ribs, missing teeth, and bleeding stitches. In the 1937 championship, Plasman got so mad after a hit, he punched Redskins quarterback Sammy Baugh. What happened next? Full-on brawl. Fans and police stormed the field. Chaos, and honestly, completely normal for that time. Back then, the NFL wasn't about safety, it was about survival. It was a play now, heal later mindset. You had to be tough first, human second. By the early 1950s, things slowly began to change. Too many injuries, too many close calls. Even Jim Thorpe, the NFL's first president, once admitted he feared for his life in the trenches. But before that, the league didn't glorify skill, it glorified grit. And it became what it is today because of players who could take a hit and keep going. From leather to plastic. The turn of an era. Things were finally starting to change by the late 1940s and early 1950s, and fast. In 1943, the NFL made 2 big moves. First, helmets became mandatory. Yep, players could actually skip the helmet before that. Second, the league began relaxing substitution rules, giving players a bit of breathing room. Kind of. Still, the NFL didn't seriously consider a plastic face mask until 1955. Before that, it was just your face and a prayer. But then came the post-war tech boom. Riddell's plastic helmet returned, now with real cushioning inside, and that changed everything. Chin straps got tougher. By 1949, nearly every player had swapped leather for hard plastic. Shoulder pads became molded. Thigh and knee pads became the norm. Even cleats saw better soles, more grip, more speed. And it wasn't just the gear. The rulebook got an overhaul too. Those dangerous goalposts on the goal line moved to the back. Forward passing opened up. Incomplete passes no longer meant a turnover. And the biggest shift? By 1950, teams could finally use unlimited substitutions. No more Iron Man football. Now, offense and defense had separate squads. The 60-minute man was gone, and strategy took center stage. All this was happening just in time, because by 1958, the NFL was ready for prime time. That year's championship broadcast nationwide, coast to coast. They called it the greatest game ever played. And without the grit and hard-earned lessons of the leather era, none of it would have happened. Cut to today's NFL, roaring crowds, sleek helmets, perfect turf. Now, players run on climate-controlled fields, wear polycarbonate helmets with multi-bar face masks, and have medical teams on standby. Instant replays, clear graphics, modern everything. But those roots, they're still there. Every rule, every helmet, every sideline scanner. It all began with guys in mud-splattered leather caps, fighting through freezing fields. As one historian put it, those leatherhead warriors inspired the popular vision of old-timey football. And honestly, that vision still shapes the soul of the game. Because the leather era didn't just come before the NFL we know, it built it. The grit, the danger, the brainstorming madness, the mud-soaked championships. That was the spark. Without it, we may never have fallen in love with football. It was cruel. It was beautiful. And it was the proving ground for everything the NFL has become. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates.